is at the start of all food production. At the very beginning of the food supply chain are seed companies whose work is to breed, produce, and distribute seeds of agricultural, horticultural, and ornamental plant species. Many of the Sustainable Development Goals are linked to agriculture. This year, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres will convene a Food Systems Summit as part of the Decade of Action to achieve the SDGs by 2030. In this first episode of Stories from the Ground, we will hear how in different parts of the world, like the Americas, Asia and the Pacific, and Europe, plant breeders are creating innovations that help feed the world and help protect and restore the earth. On the other side of the world, crops like Bambara groundnut and different types of indigenous legumes and vegetables play an important role in improving local nutrition and have a real potential to take millions of people out of hunger and malnourishment. In Indonesia, Nepal and Ethiopia, volunteers from Plant Breeders Without Borders have initiated a program to increase the production of underutilized but highly nutritious crops.
Hello, my name's Anthony Ledden. I'm the founder of Plant Breeders Without Borders. So Plant Breeders Without Borders is an NGO, and what we do is we get plant breeders to volunteer their time to go and work in developing countries, training smallholder farmers how to breed and develop their own varieties and crops of underutilized crops. So they're crops that are not commonly used or not the mainstream type crops, but ones that are in the background that are very important to those smallholder farmers in the regions that they're in, but they have very little research and breeding work done on them. So this is an opportunity to help develop varieties in crops that may be only land races or very underdeveloped crops that are not being able to be used by farmers to get the highest yields with the land that they're using there at the moment. Initially, the first project we had was in Ethiopia, where we looked at forages for their livestock production systems over there. So specifically dairying, which was really expanding and growing in Ethiopia. So they were really looking for forages to help feed their cattle and dairy market. So they usually just fed teff, straw to their livestock, and they were finding that wasn't sufficient enough to be able to give them all the nutritional needs that they needed to produce milk. And so there was quite a strong interest in forage species like oats and alfalfa or lucerne, all those sorts of different crops, so that farmers could grow their own seed and then produce their own varieties in that space. So that was our first pilot project in Ethiopia, and Indonesia was a country where we looked at using a crop called Bambara groundnut. And Bambara groundnut I classify as a climate change super crop. It's a legume, and the great benefits of legumes are that they're a very sustainable crop to grow for smallholder farmers because they fix their own nitrogen. So that nitrogen can be then used for other crops. And so we focused on this in Indonesia, and one of the benefits of using legumes as well is the nutrition that brings into the diets of poorer people in the community. So having higher levels of protein, which we get out of legumes, means that the nutrition of their younger infants, when they're fed crops like Bambara groundnut, is much greater improved, because the protein that they need in their bodies to help them grow is readily utilised from these legumes, and Bambara groundnut is one of them. And the third project that we've done so far was in Nepal, where we focused on the underutilised crops, buckwheat and millets. So they were really important in their space because buckwheat's used as a good control for weeds in organic farming systems. And also millet is quite important in their diets, especially for nutrition of younger infants and that as well, because it's very high in the ability to produce malt, and it's just behind barley in its ability to do that. So in a tropical country like Nepal is, it's great to be able to have a crop that's so good for infant nutrition that can produce a lot of that malt in that situation. So they were the two major crops that we focused on in that space in Nepal.
All over the world, seed companies working with local communities are taking action to end hunger and malnutrition by not only improving major crops that nourish a big part of the global population, like wheat and rice, but also by increasing the availability of underutilized but highly nutritional crops like peanuts and indigenous legumes and vegetables. Together, seed companies contribute to providing the input that farmers need to grow food and to keep our diverse populations nourished.